What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on the Attachment Confessions. My name is Chelsea, and I am super excited that you're here for episode 9. For those of you that are brand new to the Attachment Confessions, welcome to the pod. I am so glad that you are here. From the moment I discovered attachment science, everything about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. Hashtag mind blown. And now I'm figuring out what it takes to earn my attachment security and have the best possible relationships moving forward. Here on the Attachment Confessions, we'll be diving into all things attachment science, while you guys tag along on my attachment healing adventure. My hope is that by bringing attachment science to those of you who have never heard of it before, and by sharing my own story, you'll also be inspired to set out on your own attachment healing journey. All right, we just wrapped up our 3-part breakup series. So, for those of you who may have missed episodes 6 through 8, especially those of you who may be on the brink of a breakup or are fresh off calling it quits with your former boo, or know of anybody that falls into either of those categories, be sure to catch up on and share those episodes. Lots of helpful info is packed into those episodes, featuring tons of guidance from one of my go-to attachment experts, Thais Gibson, so definitely go check those out. And while you're at it, if you could please hit the follow or subscribe button so that you never miss an episode, and leave the podcast a review, I would be forever grateful. Okay, I've had a number of you guys reach out to me since dropping episode 8 in regards to me sharing about the abuse that I experienced in one of my previous relationships. It's pretty apparent that opening up about that struck a chord with many of you. I love hearing from you guys, and the fact that you feel comfortable enough to reach out to me and share some of your own similar experiences has seriously touched my heart. It means so much to me. It makes me feel like we're forming something really special here, and I absolutely love that. Now, do I wish we were bonding with each other over less traumatic life experiences? Yeah, 1 billion%. It crushes my heart to know that some of you guys have lived through your own versions of hell on earth like I have. But it also reaffirms that doing this podcast isn't for nothing. It actually matters. If I hadn't gone through certain horrendous things, I wouldn't be here today sharing those dark parts of my life with you guys. If it weren't for the darkness, the light that I live in today wouldn't be nearly as sweet and as beautiful without being able to compare it to those dark parts. And because of that, I'm also able to connect with you guys on this deep, meaningful level. Everything I've gone through has made me who I am today, which I'd like to believe is a continuous, better version of myself as I keep on learning from my past and earn my attachment security. Because that part of episode 8 seemed to resonate with so many of you, I thought it would be helpful to discuss something in further detail. I've gotten questions like, what's the difference between attachment and personality disorders? Or where do narcissists fall within the attachment spectrum? Let me be clear. The abuse that person put me through had nothing to do with attachment. That person struggled with issues that stem far beyond attachment. As a very quick refresher, the science of attachment refers to the attachment style you form when you are a child based on the emotional attunement level, or lack thereof, of your parents or primary caregivers. This formed attachment style then goes on to shape how you behave moving forward in your relationships for the rest of your life, primarily in romantic relationships. Attachment is not a mental illness or a personality disorder. It is a pattern of behavior based on subconscious beliefs about love and intimacy. Since attachment is learned, remember, guys, it can be unlearned. You can change and heal your insecure attachments with the right tools. Okay, emphasis on with the right tools. However, psychological construct, such as narcissism, is not changeable in the way that attachment is. It is integrated into one's personality. Now, there are tinges of narcissism that can show up in attachment styles, but that doesn't make someone a full on narcissist. For example, some traits of the fearful avoidant, when their attachment wounds are triggered, can come across or seem very manipulative at times. This is because their core need of being seen, heard, and understood by their partner might appear manipulative. However, this is a subconscious response. It's not the FA's actual intention to manipulate or control. With a narcissist, though, their entire motivation in life is to be able to control others. So the manipulation tactics they use are very intentional. So, like I mentioned before, attachment primarily shows up in romantic relationships, right? Well, another key difference when deciphering attachment versus narcissism is that narcissism is going to present itself across all different areas of someone's life. It won't only be reserved for their romantic relationships. Narcissism is also measured on a scale, similar to how we've talked about attachment being on a spectrum, right? With anxious preoccupied on one end, dismissive avoidance on the opposite, securely attached sitting just right in the middle, and fearful avoidance having the joy of operating across all points of the spectrum, depending on the situation. Narcissism is also on a spectrum of its own. It's not an all or nothing personality trait. Now, as odd as this may sound, there is actually a healthy level of narcissism, if we must call it that. Really, it's just a healthy level of self esteem, but hey, as I've stated before, I'm not a psychologist. So think of it like this: on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is the most extreme level of self regard, and 0 is no self regard at all. No self regard at all is actually called egoism. Egoism is the total opposite of full blown narcissism. Which sounds great, right? Like, oh, for sure, Chelsea, I would identify as an egoist because I'm definitely not a narcissist. They're the worst. Well, although part of your statement would be correct, it actually wouldn't be healthy to be a total egoist. While narcissists are, in fact, the worst, because of the whole exhibiting grandiosity and their gross need for attention and admiration thing, egoists have very low self esteem and tend to silently struggle as they are always putting the needs of others first. That part sounds super noble, but it's completely self abandoning, which, as we know, is not healthy. Since egoists prioritize the needs of others to an extreme, they really struggle with setting healthy boundaries with others. They also avoid taking up any sort of space and totally dodge receiving attention. So, in terms of narcissism being on a spectrum, it's probably best to fall somewhere between a 4 and a 6 so that you aren't totally getting walked on 24/7, but you also aren't the one walking all over everybody either. There is such thing as a healthy level of self-confidence, and that is where we should strive to be. Now, there is a difference between narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, also known as NPD. In terms of the spectrum of severity, narcissistic personality disorder is what would be on the opposite end of egoism. The DSM 5, which is basically like the Bible of psychology, classifies NPD as a personality disorder, which is a type of mental illness that is characterized by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, an intense need for admiration, and a lack of compassion and empathy for others. Individuals with NPD often exhibit an inflated sense of self importance and struggle to care about or even recognize the feelings of others. NPD can significantly impact all sorts of interpersonal relationships, not just romantic ones, and can create major challenges in various areas of life, including work and other social interactions. According to the DSM-5, a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder requires having 5 or more of the following criteria. First is grandiosity, which is an exaggerated sense of self-importance and achievements. The second one is preoccupation with fantasies. So these would be like fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, or ideal love. Third is belief of being special. So obviously, we are all special. We are all made in the image of God. But this is like an extreme belief of being special, like the belief that you are superior to others and can only be understood by or should associate with other superior or high status people. Fourth is the need for excessive admiration. So, this would be a constant need for, and quite frankly, the expectation of receiving attention and validation and praise from others. Number five is the sense of entitlement. So, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with one's expectations. Six is interpersonally exploitative. So, taking advantage of others in order to achieve personal goals. Seven is the lack of empathy, which is an inability to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Number eight is envy. So, they are often secretly envious of others, or they believe that others are highly envious of them. And the ninth characteristic is arrogant behaviors. So, exhibiting extremely haughty behaviors or attitudes about themselves. Now, although both men and women can struggle with narcissistic personality disorder, there is a higher prevalence in men. NPD also often coexists with other mental health disorders, such as depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders. The fact that narcissistic personality disorder is classified as a mental illness indicates that it's not merely a personality trait or behavior. It is a diagnosable condition that can significantly impair an individual's functioning and quality of life. It also deeply impacts those close to them, especially their romantic partners. Now, there are actually two different types of narcissists: overt and covert. Overt, which is also called grandiose narcissism, is characterized by extroversion and social dominance and a strong need for admiration. So, overt is the kind that we generally think of when we imagine a classic narcissist. Someone with overt narcissism might come across as outgoing, arrogant, entitled, overbearing, having an exaggerated self image, needing to be praised and admired, exploitative, overly competitive, and lacking empathy. Studies have found that people with overt narcissism are more likely to feel good about themselves and less likely to experience uncomfortable emotions like sadness, worry, or loneliness. They may also tend to overestimate their own abilities and intelligence, especially their emotional intelligence. Now, there are actually a few subtypes that fall under overt narcissism. They are antagonistic narcissism, communal narcissism, and malignant narcissism. Someone with overt antagonistic narcissism focuses on rivalry and competition. Some of their primary features include arrogance, tendency to take advantage of others, tendency to compete with others, and proneness to show a higher level of disagreeability and arguing. Now, someone with overt communal narcissism, they are actually opposite of antagonistic. Someone with communal narcissism actually values fairness and sees themselves as altruistic. However, there's a major gap between these beliefs and the person's behavior. Someone with this subtype might become easily morally outraged, describe themselves as empathetic and generous, and react strongly to things that they see as unfair. But the key difference between communal narcissism And someone who has genuine concern for the well being of others is the role of social power and self importance. So, for example, while communal narcissism might cause someone to say and believe that they have a strong moral code or care for others, they might not realize that the way they actually treat people doesn't match up with their beliefs. We seem to have a lot of this going on in our world right now. Okay, the last subtype that falls under overt narcissism is malignant narcissism. This subtype is a more severe form when we're talking about the narcissism spectrum. So, in addition to the many common traits of narcissism, like a strong sense of entitlement and need for praise, malignant narcissism can also present some sinister qualities such as vindictiveness, sadism, which is getting enjoyment from others' pain, aggression, and paranoia. Someone with overt malignant narcissism might also share some traits with antisocial personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. All right, those are the three subtypes of overt narcissism. Yeesh. Covert narcissism, on the other hand, which is also known as vulnerable narcissism, is characterized by traits like hypersensitivity, defensiveness, and a hidden sense of entitlement. Like we touched on before, when we think of narcissists, we generally associate them with being loud and overbearing. Well, covert narcissists don't fit this pattern. They are in total contrast with overt narcissists. Common traits of the covert narcissist are expressions of low self esteem, a higher likelihood of experiencing anxiety, depression, and shame, introversion, insecurity or low confidence, passive aggressive behavior, defensiveness, avoidance, and a tendency to feel or play the victim. Don't get it twisted though, guys. Someone with covert narcissism will still be totally self focused. This is likely to conflict with a deep fear or sense of not being enough. Now, look, I'm not here to diagnose anybody on the attachment confessions, okay? I do not have the qualifications to do so. However, after all the research I've done, coupled with my own lived experience, the abusive partner that I referenced in episode 8, if I were a betting woman, which typically I am not the gambling type, but if I were, I have zero doubt that he falls into the category of a covert narcissist, which would also explain why it took me so freaking long to realize what was actually going on in that relationship. Overt narcissists are obvious, they're in your face. But coverts, they can fly under the radar for quite some time. Give me an overt narcissist any day of the week over a covert. Now, let's talk about diagnosing severe narcissism or NPD. Unfortunately, narcissistic personality disorder is severely underdiagnosed. Reason being is that someone who is a true narcissist doesn't see themselves as a narcissist. They don't feel the need to change, so they aren't the type of person to go seeking help for this issue. They can also be extremely charming on the surface and are highly manipulative. So it's super easy for them to trick a therapist during the brief time that they spend with them. They can put on a good act for an hour. It's the people closest to them, like their romantic partner, or with the most exposure to them, like their family, friends, or coworkers, that are going to experience the painful pattern of narcissistic behavior. Now, like we talked about earlier, someone with a more extreme level of narcissism is also likely to experience other mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, or substance abuse. Sometimes it's the impact of those issues that can be the catalyst for seeking help. And in that process, the underlying issue of narcissism might be uncovered. Strong emphasis on the word might. In terms of treatment, typically someone with NPD would need to undergo psychotherapy, particularly psychodynamic therapy, which focuses on understanding the underlying issues contributing to the disorder. Unfortunately, there isn't specific medication to manage or treat narcissistic personality disorder. However, associated issues like depression or anxiety can obviously be treated with medication. In the unfortunately rare occurrence that someone with narcissism seeks professional support, there is a lot of potential for personal growth, improved mental health, and the opportunity for a much richer life with flourishing relationships. It's pretty clear that after today's podcast, we can all agree that narcissism is an extremely complex psychological construct, possibly more complex than you've ever been aware of before, right? Along with any other mental health disorder out there, my heart seriously breaks for people that suffer with extreme levels of narcissism or NPD. I hate that on this earth we are plagued with such horrendous mental health issues. At the same time, if you've ever experienced having a narcissist in your life, especially as a romantic partner, it is truly confusing, terrifying, and can quite literally strip you of your own humanity due to their extreme manipulation and control. I pray for my ex. I pray he finds the healing he so desperately needs so that he can experience true peace and joy himself in this life. I also pray no one else has to ever endure his covert narcissism the way that I did for so many years. Amen. Two things can be true at once. I hope this deep dive helps show there's no correlation between attachment and narcissism. They are two totally different constructs. I know this was another heavy episode, but I do want to end things on a positive note. Okay, I am so incredibly excited to share some really awesome news with you guys. Okay, two things actually. So, first thing, today is the day that I begin a 4-week hybrid group coaching experience with my favorite attachment expert, the one who I discovered attachment science from, Dr. Sarah Hensley. You guys, this is the healing work I've been talking about. I am finally going to get to learn in an online hybrid group setting with other people just like me looking to heal their insecure attachments, the metacognitive tools to truly change my brain and rewire new neurological behavior patterns. I am so freaking stoked and I can't wait to tell you guys all about it. So stay tuned. Second awesome thing, I've been asked to speak at a university on November 14th about my lived experience. I'm sorry, what? Me? You want little old hot mess express healing fearful avoidant me to come speak to your social work students? Trust me, guys, I am simultaneously flabbergasted and so honored to have the opportunity to share my story. Don't worry, guys. Okay, I clarified that they are totally aware that I do not hold any psychology related degrees or any certifications of any kind in attachment or anything that declares to anyone that I am an expert in anything. Okay, I am just a girl with a podcast sharing about how attachment science changed my life. And they said, that's perfect. So, yeah, I obliged and will be doing that in like a week and a half. So, please wish me luck. It's wild what starting a podcast on your living room floor can do. I mean, the totally unexpected doors that could open, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is for you guys, my listeners. Attachment science changed my life for real. And if it can help any of you the same way that it's helped me, that's the true purpose of doing this. If you know of anyone else whose life could be changed by learning about this stuff, share this podcast with them. Until next Wednesday, I hope you all have an absolutely amazing week, and I'll see you next week here on the Attachment Confessions. Love you guys. Bye.